Hey Twisters, welcome to my second round preview between the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers here in the 2022 Stanley Cup Playoffs. So the way that I'll do this preview, first of all, a playoff profile of each team with how they performed in the first round. Then we'll look at the history between these two teams, the regular season series from this year, and also playoff history. Then I'll tell you 5 things to look out for in this series. And lastly, I'll give my prediction for this series and my overall outlook. Of course, I want to know your thoughts in the comments down below. So what do you predict for this series for the Battle of Alberta? So let me know down there. And guys, we're doing live streams throughout the playoffs in addition to content like this. So if you're new here and you're following the playoffs, you like hockey, hit that red subscribe button down below. Join our growing community here on YouTube. Let's begin with our playoff profiles for each team. We'll start with the Calgary Flames here. They won in 7 games against the Dallas Stars. They trailed that series 2-1. They outscored Dallas 15-14. So that last goal, the Johnny Gaudreau overtime winner in Game 7. 3 things that I noticed here. First of all, they dominated puck possession. On average, they outshot Dallas by a margin of 41-28. And they really contained the Stars beyond that top line. Of course, Roope Hintz was missing in Game 7. The Oilers do have a little bit better depth, but I think this was a decent blueprint for how they could defend a similar team. And I actually like the play from the defense in that game. I know they committed a lot of turnovers, and the Oilers were actually second in the first round in turnovers forced per game. But I still think that Calgary had a lot of great breakouts, especially late in that series. Point number 2, if there was somebody who was quiet in that series for Calgary, it was Andrew Mangiapane. He had just 1 goal and 1 assist, 12 shots on goal through those 7 games. Toffoli was also a little bit quiet. He had that goal in Game 7 to open the scoring there, and he did pump 23 shots on net. Yarn Kropp, a couple other players there were quiet in terms of giving the Calgary Flames a little bit of scoring from the second and third lines. But even so, at least Gaudreau and Tkachuk were able to do enough offensively to get this team over the hump. Third observation here, the Flames got into some penalty trouble, but they were able to weather the storm. The Stars had the 11th ranked power play going into the series, but the Flames killed off 91.7% of the power plays there. They took the 3rd most penalties per game, though, in the first round. So going up against a team like Edmonton, who had the 3rd best power play in the regular season, that could be a big factor in determining who wins this series. As for the Edmonton Oilers, they battled back from 3-2 down in their series against the Kings, and eventually they triumphed 4-3. They outscored LA 27-17, but that doesn't really tell the whole story, especially as the series went on, because the Kings actually outscored the Oilers 11-10 in the final 4 games, but it was 6-2 Oilers in games 6 and 7 combined. All right, first observation here, McJesus Supreme. The guy was just amazing out there, just holding onto the puck the entire time. So he can kind of be a defensive asset in that he's not exactly giving teams out there many chances to go the other way and to get shot opportunities out there. So in 7 games, 4 goals, 10 assists for 14 points, plus 10 rating. He logged 21 minutes and 41 seconds of time on ice per game. Yeah, he was on the ice for 4 of the 17 goals, 5 on 5. That's not that bad though, and I didn't see anything really stand out defensively in his game in a bad sense. Second of all, the Oilers' defense definitely held up against the Kings. The Flames are going to be a different story, but nonetheless, I was encouraged by some of the performances I saw out there. Somebody like Evan Bouchard was actually playing really well in his own end. Like Game 7, his defense was particularly strong. You also had Cody Ceci. Yeah, that's right. 1 goal and 5 assists to lead the Blue Liners in that series, a +8 rating, and overall, really good job by Jay Woodcroft with his pairings and just kind of distributing the ice time very evenly. Like Ceci was 21 minutes and 5 seconds. That was the 2nd most among the Blue Liners. So overall, the defensive composition was very well executed, I would say, for this team. Mike Smith had a .944 save percentage, 5 on 5, when Ceci was on the ice. I just wanted to point that out. And overall, they did a really good job of shutting down the top players for the LA Kings. So Anze Kopitar in particular was held in check. He had just a goal and 3 assists through those 7 games, despite being on the ice for 22 minutes a game. And I mean, he played really hard out there. I think that he played well, but still the Kings were able to, or the Oilers were able to get their sticks in the way of the passing lanes there and disrupt Kopitar fairly well. And thirdly, Mike Smith played fairly well, and now we're talking about 2 months of consecutively really good play from him. So 2.29 goals against average and a .938 save percentage with 2 shutouts, including Game 7 against the LA Kings. Now, he was actually under siege at times in this series. He faced an average of 37.3 shots per game. Not exactly the highest quality of chances for the Kings from what I saw, but even so, Smith strong in his net there. And when you compare him versus Jacob Markstrom, who was really good against the Dallas Stars, I'm not saying that Smith is going to look like a Vezina Trophy finalist, but possibly with the play that I've seen from him and also from the defense for the Oilers, maybe he could actually match whatever Mike Smith or whatever Markstrom is doing at his end of the ice. Okay, let's talk about the history between these two teams. First of all, the regular season series from this year. So both teams won 2 games. The Calgary Flames outscored the Oilers 17-16. The last time that they met was on March 26th in a 9-5 barn burner. You guys probably remember that. So Tkachuk, in those 4 games, he had 3 goals and 5 assists with a +5 rating. And Johnny Gaudreau had 1 goal but 7 assists with also a +5 rating. As for the Oilers, McDavid had 3 goals and 4 assists and a -3 rating. Now, all 3 of those goals were actually scored in the first game. So this guy, he was held in check down the stretch. Leon Draisatil assisted on those 3 goals in the first game, but he ended up with 5 goals and 6 assists over those 4 games with a -2 rating. But he was definitely able to produce out there, and we'll talk about him in just a little bit too. And the overall playoff history between these two teams, they've met 5 times, with the Oilers winning 4 of those 5 series, 3 of which were with Wayne Gretzky. They haven't met since 1991, when the Oilers defeated the Flames in 7 games that year. They had both won the Stanley Cup the 2 years prior. The all-time record for the Oilers against the Flames in the postseason is 19 wins and 11 losses. Now here are 5 things to look out for in this series. Point number 1 here, it's the Battle of Alberta, so do expect a nasty series with the likes of Milan Lucic, Nikita Zadorov, Matthew Tkachuk for the Flames, and then you have Zach Kassian and, of course, Evander Kane now for the Edmonton Oilers. But here's the thing, you got to draw a fine line. You don't want to get into penalty trouble. The Flames had the 10th ranked power play in the regular season. The Oilers had the 3rd ranked power play in the regular season. So while you want to be the aggressor and find ways to kind of get under the other team's skin, you don't want to be taking those retaliation penalties when the referees have their eyes on the infractions at that point. So really, you got to draw that fine line as much as you want to be, getting in the other team's grill, as much as you want to be pumping up the home crowd as well. Point number 2, could depth scoring be the difference maker in this series? So McDavid's going to get his. He was, of course, very dominant in the first round. He played with Draisatil a little bit, and Leon had his productivity out there as well, and so did Evander Kane. But then you look at sort of the players beneath them, Nugent Hopkins, especially as the series went on, and Zach Hyman. Those guys were really quiet. I reacted to 3 games live here on the channel. I didn't really remember saying their names all that much in that series. And then you look, of course, at the Flames. I talked about Mangiapane, in addition to Toffoli, who did get his shots on goal. Kalle Jarnkrok is someone who can also add some depth scoring there. So maybe these guys emerge if all of the attention from the defenses are being put on the top line players. For point number 3, I look at the coaching battle here. You got Jay Woodcroft for the Oilers, first-year head coach, interim head coach, going up against the longtime veteran Daryl Sutter. So these guys have actually coached against each other in the playoffs before, but Sutter was with the Kings. Of course, he won a couple Stanley Cups there, and Woodcroft was an assistant with the San Jose Sharks at that time. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here, because Jay Woodcroft, as much as I really like what he did with his defensive pairings, he might need to make some adjustments to the forward groups. Now, he did shuffle the lines a little bit in that first series against the Kings, so I'm wondering here, does Kane go to the top line with McDavid? Does Draisaitl drop down as center? What about Puljujärvi? Could he be called into a top 6 role as well? So look at some of the shuffling down there. They got to find a way to get Zach Hyman going, of course, too. I think that the Oilers are a little bit more up in the air with regards to how they're going to deploy their lines. I think the Flames are a little bit more set in stone there. So it's going to be, how does Jay Woodcroft adapt to the deployments that Daryl Sutter has made? Point number 4, can the Flames recover if they get down early against the Oilers? So Edmonton won all 4 of their games by scoring first, and they were able to hold on. They had the lead going into the 3rd period in all 4 of those games that they won, and yes, they held on there. Whereas the Flames actually trailed in 5 of their 7 games against the Stars. They were able to battle back, but against the Oilers, I don't know if that's going to happen, especially with how the Oilers are able to hold onto the puck as much as they do. So I think this really stresses the need for the Flames to stay disciplined. So if they get down early, they don't want to be frustrated out there and taking dumb penalties, especially against that vaunted Oilers power play. And lastly, there hasn't been a lot of conversation ever since Game 7, but it's Leon Draisaitl's health going into this series. So Draisaitl, he had 5 goals and 4 assists in the first round, but he suffered a high ankle sprain in Game 6. So he played in Game 7, and he actually logged 22 minutes and 38 seconds of time on ice. But at this point, he might need to actually rest up. Frank Saravalli actually tweeted out today, he's wondering if the Oilers will have Draisaitl playing Game 1, or maybe they rest him for the first game or 2 in Calgary. Now we get to my final outlook and my prediction here. I'm not a pro analyst by any means, so yeah, disagree with me all you want in the comments below. Just keep it respectful, guys. So anyway, originally when I was predicting the playoffs, I had the Flames going up against the Kings in the second round, and I had the Flames advancing. But the Oilers, seeing the way that they were able to defend in those final 2 games, that has me convinced that they can actually put together a full comprehensive game in all three zones. McDavid is playing out of his mind right now. Yes, Draisatil is a question, but I like how Mike Smith is playing, and the defense has been pretty supportive for him as well. So I do kind of like the Oilers going into this. With the Flames, I do have a little bit of a question for their secondary scoring, just like I do for Edmonton. Markstrom's been very good as well, but I think about how they've been getting down early in the series or in the playoffs so far, and the Oilers, again, are a team who can jump on you early on with some of the speed that they have with guys like Kane and also McDavid too. So I'm going to pick the Oilers here in the Battle of Alberta. This is the third time I've picked the lower seeded team in the second round. Yeah, I don't like to do the same thing that the analysts do out there, so I've got the Oilers here. I said 7 games for the other 2 series as well. So in this case, I say the Oilers close it out at home with Ben Stelter in the building there in 6 games. So that's my prediction. I want to know your thoughts on this down in the comments down below, so sound off down there and stick around. We've got more great playoff content and live streams to look forward to with great twisters like yourself. So thank you guys so much. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, guys. That helps others like you discover my content, and I'll see you around for more playoff content. Cheers, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and let's get battling.